Fox News back in the hot seat. Ladies and gentlemen, they are getting sued again. You see, we've already reported at length on the Dominion lawsuit, which cost Fox News nearly $1 billion. We've reported on the Smartmatic lawsuit, which is still in the works and could cost them a whole boatload more because Smartmatic now knows the ins and outs and the points of weakness, shall we say, and is asking for a whole lot more. The ask is way higher than Dominion's was. And then we know about the shareholder lawsuits because logically shareholders are like, hey, management, if you didn't think this was true, why did you allow your talent to say it on the air? Why didn't you have some kind of system in place that said, this is really no-go territory? Why would you keep inviting the same old guests back, allowing them to defame a corporation if you didn't even believe this? How can you sit there and hide behind journalism in that case? Because actually, what you were really doing is trying to go for ratings in a rather untruthful way. If you didn't believe it, and yet everybody was doing this. And so, obviously, shareholders have a right to sue in that case because it's a kind of negligence. What's management doing? If they don't like that this is going down, then why does the talent keep hitting it over and over and over again? I mean, to Tucker Carlson's credit, he didn't really. But, all this stuff comes out and there's text between him and other people and management. Oh, they don't like this. And yet, it kept going on the air. Running the asylum. There's a question for you. Well, now they're facing another lawsuit. I think the answer, by the way, is yes. And by the way, the inmates should not be in the asylum. Just let the inmates loose so that they can do their own thing. Right? All the more reason for you to subscribe to this show, to this podcast. I'm here every day live, sometimes twice a day. What do you know? On a busy day like today, I did have to go over and talk to my friends at Newsmax. I hope you caught that live on Chris Salcedo's show. We were talking about Bidenomics. I'm going to get to a little bit more of that in just a moment. But look, Fox is struggling for a variety of reasons we can get into. But the headline today is Tony Bobulinski, who is the former business partner of Hunter Biden. They were doing that deal in China with that Chinese energy company because apparently it's all good to do deals with traditional natural gas energy companies out of China and Romania and Ukraine. You just can't do any with any of them here in the U.S., right? Because we get all this ESG stuff and we're all about green, but we can do them with the Chinese companies. Anyway, Tony Bobulinski is suing Fox and suing one of the anchors because of some allegedly false information that she put on the air. But let me start by reminding you, I know you know who he is, but this was a pretty good quote. I could actually loop it and play it twice. Drew, what do you say? Do we have Jim Jordan asking Tony Bobulinski who the big guy was?
Mr. Bobulinski, who's the big guy? Joe Biden. Are you sure about that? Because
Jordan, Joe Biden.
You're sure?
I'm 1,000% sure.
Mr. Bobulinski, who's the big guy? Joe Biden. Are you sure about that? Because
Jordan, Joe Biden.
You're sure?
I'm 1,000% sure.
Isn't that great? I really, really love that one. I really, really love it. And you could just sort of watch that in a loop, right? We should put that up on Shorts if we haven't already. So Tony Bobulinski is saying that Joe Biden, the president of the United States, was the big guy and that they were doing all these deals. Granted, he was out of office at the time they were talking to the Chinese. But the problem is that the guy who was running the Chinese company, Zhang, well, he was kind of tight with the CCP, so it's not a great look, whether or not it's illegal. I mean, the Ukrainian stuff, like that actually, I think, Republicans have a leg to stand on with that one because your son should not be collecting tons of money from Ukraine while you are in charge as Vice President of the United States of Ukrainian policy and have the ability to give or take away lots and lots of money, as he made very clear. So that's a potential use of your influence in a really gross, way, un-American way. I mean, we're not, I used to think, a corrupt nation like you find in Latin America or Eastern Europe, but apparently we are. Apparently that is what we have become. Let's not be naive. Your son's working for an energy company, a natural gas company in Ukraine. You had a son who gets discharged from the military. He has no knowledge about this natural gas business. He gets this gig while you're running Ukraine policy. And then the very guy that was investigating your son's company that was paying him insane amounts of money every month to sit on the board, you go and demand get fired? That doesn't look good. Anyway, Tony Bobulinski is like, he's the big guy, he's the big guy, he's the big guy. And so, now he's in this legal trouble. He's going to go testify before Congress, etc. And one of the commentators on Fox News, who actually behind the scenes, and I know her, is a very nice young woman, but she's playing a bit of a part there, right? Let's be honest. They have her employed in that job to kind of be the agitator. They need someone, right? And she's the go-to agitator. But she might have spoken incorrectly, at least according to Bobulinski, she did. And so now Jessica Tarlov is getting harassed pretty badly by him, sued by Tony Bobulinski. She'll be covered, indemnified and that sort of thing under Fox. But Fox is also getting sued. And this is just not good timing, shall we say. Let's watch and see what Jessica said that was so offensive to Mr. Bobulinski.
Tony Bobulinski's lawyers' fees have been paid by a Trump super PAC. That's as recent as January. Do you think that a guy who's invested in how much better off he wants the United States to be and really getting to the bottom of this would be taking money from the guy who extorted the Ukrainians to get dirt on the Bidens? And we should talk about Lev Parnas, who was the Democratic witness.
I'm doing a technical thing here with the computer. Well, so that was, what she said. And she's like, look, he's getting all his legal fees paid by the GOP and Trump and the RNC and this, that, and the other. And so Tony Bobulinski is like, no, that's not correct. That's not correct. And you need to apologize. So he came out right after that happened, like that night or the very next day, and his lawyers fired off this nasty letter to Fox News. And they demanded an apology at the top of the show. Well, this is his response after. We're getting to that. They demanded an apology at the top of the show, which is really unusual on television, right? Like you don't start your show with, gosh, we were wrong. And then they demanded that she be like, a little bit not flip about it. Now, I know Jessica, I don't think she could deliver this and not flip about it, because I'm sure she was pretty perturbed about the whole thing. And so she comes off as, well, pretty flip. Let's watch Jessica Tarlov's apology, which was clearly written, and she's reading straight from the prompter, which is clearly a little challenging as well.
I would like to clarify a comment I
go.
made yesterday during our discussion of Tony Bobulinski's appearance at the congressional hearing. During an exchange with my colleagues about the hearing, I said that Mr. Bobulinski's lawyers' fees have been paid by a Trump super PAC as recently as January. What was actually said during the hearing was that the law firm representing Mr. Bobulinski was paid by a Trump PAC. I have seen no indication those payments were made in connection with Mr. Bobulinski's legal fees, and he denies that they were. All right, coming up next, a member of the
block. It may have been at the end of what they call the A block, which is the first block in the show, which, if it's at the end of the A block, it's something, but she didn't lead the show with it. So Bubba Blinsky's like, that's not an apology. And, I get it. It doesn't really feel very heartfelt, right? And he's like, you are defaming me and my reputation, and this isn't fair. And this was just one incident. I mean, imagine how Dominion felt, right? Because it kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And they're like, this is our business and it's going up in smoke. And you guys are saying things that aren't true, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they wound up with nearly $1 billion as a result. What's Jessica going to be dealing with? I mean, how much would Tony Bobulinski get out of this? He says he actually doesn't really want money. Anything that he gets out of this lawsuit is going to be donated to charity. Let's go to his statement, because he saw her apology. It wasn't enough. He went back to them and said, fix it. And they didn't. And so here you go. He writes, today, I filed a lawsuit against Ms. Jessica Tarlov of Fox News for defamation. Although I am seeking compensatory, special, and punitive damages from her for the damage her public remarks inflicted on my personal and professional reputation, this is not about money. This is about the truth, for which I have been fighting for 4 years. It is important for media personalities like Ms. Tarlov to understand that lies have consequences. I have consistently told the truth to the American people, he writes, about the deep corruption of the Biden family, and will continue to do so. And I have paid my legal expenses arising from my decision to come forward out of my own pocket. I will donate, he writes, every penny I may be awarded in this suit to a children's hospital and to support our military veterans. Ms. Tarlov refused to apologize and sincerely correct the record. I look forward to holding her accountable in a court of law and continuing to bring the truth to the American people. Anthony Bobulinski. Ooh. You know, it's interesting because he's picking a fight with her and with Fox. A lot of people have gone after Tony. So it's like, it's very interesting to me. Like they're picking some interesting fights. I mean, I think, frankly, it's important to pick these fights because truth does need to be represented. And people should not be flip about what they say about individuals that also aren't entirely in the public eye. You know, it's one thing when I call Nancy Pelosi Marie Antoinette, right? It's one thing when we talk about Joe Biden and we say, gosh, the guy seems really old. I mean, these are public figures. When we talk about celebrities and people in the public eye, it's one thing. Tony Bobulinski, has he crossed that sphere? I mean, he was kind of a private person and then gets thrown into all of this. He had the bad misfortune of teaming up with Hunter Biden, and now he's thrust into the public eye. And so a lot of people have said a lot of bad things about him, but he's choosing to go after this particular anchor and this network specifically. It's almost like you could think of it like a warning shot. I mean, Donald Trump did the same thing with George Stephanopoulos. Just a couple of weeks ago, George Stephanopoulos referred to him as something really, really bad, as a rapist, etc., on the air. And that actually hadn't been proven out in court. And so, you know, there was defamation, etc. But what Stephanopoulos was alleging was like that much further, right? And so Trump said, hey, see ya. I'll see you in court. And so he sued Stephanopoulos and he sued ABC News. And it's like, hey, you know what, media? I realize, you know, you think you can just keep getting away with saying whatever you want to say as it serves your purpose, but these are people's lives. And so you got to take a little bit more responsibility. And then maybe when you really upset them, Tony would have been happy with a heartfelt apology. Like maybe she should have not had it written by the managers. I get it. You know, legal wants to be involved in everything. But that's when you need a little prompter practice maybe, because you ought to sound like you mean it. Definitely didn't mean it. So he's not happy. He's suing. And you know what? Listen, I mean, defamation is a big, big deal thing. So we shall see what happens on that front. I am sure this is not fun for Jessica. Keep in mind, she's indemnified. So Fox will pay the legal bills and deal with it. But maybe she'll have a little more gravitas next time around. Maybe you got to think about what you're saying about the individuals themselves, right? Especially individuals that are not superstars like P. Diddy. We'll get to him because that is one wild, wild case.